All right, hello everybody, and welcome to Geopolitical Trends, where truth matters. Excited to be with you as always, and I mean it when I say it. You all know me by now. I don't say things to just say them, so because you say what you mean, so or you mean what you say. So, anyway, excited to be with you. Let me mute the computer here. There we go. Anyway, excited to be with you because I got an interesting topic. China is sanctioning companies here in the US on both the defense contractors and also some other private companies that deal with other type of businesses. But my focus is going to be in this analysis about really what's at the heart of all this. And at the same time, is this now a hint for what lies ahead moving forward? So before I do this, let me first of all say hi to everybody in our community. I'll start from the bottom this time. Babes, safe bra, good to see you from UK. Marco W, good to see you. Who else? Kenneth, Joe, Hang G as always. And I read your comment later on, Hang. Timeline Dunkley, good to see you as always. Truth Seeker, Willie Holman, as always, good to see you. Li Yang, good to see you. Karl Mao, good to see you. Wow, you're from, check out this guy. Check out this one, guys. Look where it's, happy birthday, Dr. O. Well, actually, my birthday is not today. It's tomorrow. So I was going to mention something to you guys. My birthday is tomorrow. So, but thank you, though. It's greatly appreciated. As I said, who else is here? Part-time thanker, good to see you. Loli, wow, from Finland. Loli Pletnon, good to see you. And wow, I miss Finland. Last time I was in Finland was late 80s. I enjoyed my time in Helsinki. It was very, very nice to see. Celio, good to see you as always. And Everyday Sanctity, good to see you. Birthday greetings. How did you guys know about my birthday? Did somebody mention something? So, oh my gosh, that's surprising. Anyway, very, very excited to be with you guys. So, as I said, I have a very interesting topic. This one has both angles, the geopolitical and the economics. Very, very important for you to understand those dynamics, because no matter how you look at it, guys, it will impact you one way or another. Now, some will say, well, this one has to deal with the military stuff. Yeah, it trickles down to the, it's going to hit your pocket one way or another. And you need to have an understanding ahead of time. So that's what very, very important. Oh, let me say this too, because it's the community. John Ray Degol, how are you, Dr. O? Shout from UK. I always watch you with Professor Yoon in the Philippines problems. Yes, indeed. She is a Professor Anna Malandog. So wonderful, wonderful. Good to see you, by the way. So, and this is where we're going to have to ask the key questions regarding, okay, where this is going. Now, how significant are those sanctions? Now, by the way, China sanctions are on the second round of sanctions now. I did a video for you guys. It's over there a few months ago when the first time China announced the first round of sanctions. This one is the second round. So how significant is this? Second question is, why target specific US defense companies? So third question, what are the economic and geopolitical implications? Because there will be some, no matter how you look at it. So yeah, it's very important to understand these dynamics. And the last question is this an indication for what lies ahead of the US and China relations? This question is very, very important, and I'll get to it at the when I do the analysis, because you have to understand China's strategy into all this. All this is not happening in a vacuum. So before I do this, I have two major announcements to make regarding global affairs. Of course, that's what I address here in this channel. So the first one has to do with Indonesia becoming a full member of BRICS. So now the Brazilian government announced formally that Indonesia now joins BRICS groups as a major emerging of joins BRICS group of major emerging economies as a full member. It's a big deal. So even the foreign ministry of Indonesia said in a statement today that it welcomed the announcements and that BRIC membership is a strategic means to increase cooperation and partnership with other developing countries. End of quote. I have another picture here, and I give credit to Ricardo Stuckert. This is that's his picture. So we give credit where credit is due. This is a nice picture of Prabowo with the Brazilian president there. Very, 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 very important dynamics. Here is why, guys, briefly here. Why? It's because U.S. pressure on Indonesia backfired. We were pressuring Indonesia to steer away from joining BRICS. Indonesia has given the middle finger to the Americans and said, who the heck you are to dictate to us the terms? So they decided to move forward with it. Speaking of Indonesia, that is one of on my list. When I go to Asia next time, I have a plan of visiting Indonesia to see with my own eyes where the development is going regarding the infrastructure in joint ventures between China and Indonesia. So, and we will talk later about this more as I finalize my own planning. Then I run it by you regarding the financing of this particular trip, because it's going to be more than one location, more than China this time around. So the second one has to do with none other than the dictator, PM Trudeau, dictator. He announced his resignation. Okay, now here is the key that I need you to understand. Dictator Trudeau have not resigned yet. He announced his resignation because he put some political obstacles. Two of them. One, he dissolved the parliament, which means what? He still controls power. And second is he will not move forward till there is a replacement. And if you think about when the parliament is going to resume its duties, is till March, which means basically dictator Trudeau was playing political game. It's because he saw the numbers, how pissed the Canadians are, because they want him to resign. So he said he will resign, okay, or he's resigning. But technically, he still holds power. And this is one thing about the corruption that exists in Western governments. Once they get into power, it became part of their DNA. So, and not just with them, it's human nature. So that's why if you don't keep an eye on yourself, for those who may be in a position of power, I don't know, whatever, you always check on yourself to make sure you are not abusing whatever. So in reality, dictator Trudeau is thinking twice. Here is my thing, guys, and this is my own opinion. If you happen to be a Canadian watching this, I think he should be put to trial for what he did during the last 2 or 3 years. You all remember COVID. You all remember the policies he imposed on the Canadian society. You all remember what they did to the demonstrators, the truckers. How can you forget all this? And that is not the key. The key is the violation of the law. But again, Canadians will have to decide for themselves. Anyway, let's move on to our topic. Before I do this, guys, please, if this is your first time on the channel here, please make sure to subscribe. I will greatly appreciate your support. I want you guys to help me out to reach 100,000 subscribers soon. So I will greatly appreciate your support for that. So, all right, let's talk about China sanctioning U.S. defense companies, 10 of them to be exact on a list, in addition to 28 other companies. So, and like I mentioned, not only the significance of this is the importance, understanding that it's no longer China being the nice guy on the block. That's it. I think that era is over. So, and this is where Beijing announced recently, just yesterday, as a matter of fact, based on what I read, and I looked at the source of the information. This is not about what the U.S. is saying. That they announced the sanctioning of 10 U.S. defense companies. This is the second round, as I mentioned, in 1 week. And why is this? Because this one is in response to the U.S. arms sales to Taiwan. Remember when I did the video for your live stream yesterday about the Tony Blinken going to South Korea, and there were 3 entities, 2 sovereign nations, Japan and, sovereign, semi-sovereign, if I may use the term, Japan and South Korea, and the third entity is the renegade state of Taiwan. What they all share in common, they purchase a lot of American weapons. So China is stepping forward now because China wants to avoid any major military confrontation with the US over Taiwan. Because one way or another, I know some might not like what I'm saying here, but to me, I see the facts on the ground. I was in Taipei. I went to Taiwan physically to see. And during my time over there, while I was in Taipei, there were assets, U.S. naval assets moving in closer to the islands. So to China is thinking in terms, we rather approach this in a peaceful way as far as the reunification instead of using force. You and I know if China uses force, it will be overwhelming. And the U.S. ain't going to get involved, no matter what you hear. Because logistically, it won't make any sense. China already had a plan. I had a chance to read one white paper a few years ago when I was still in DC about the strategic thinking of China, militarily speaking, in case of a conflict. That was back then. And back then, I came across the information suggesting that China has already put in place the targeting locations should a conflict erupt between the US and China in that part of the world. And as I said again, logistically, it doesn't make sense because we have to move all our assets. Yeah, we're going to use some of their, like the ones in Philippines, South Korea, Japan, Australia, but that won't be enough. And this is why China is taking these measures to impose the sanctions on those companies that are selling arms to Taiwan. And these sanctions include restrictions on the subsidiaries of major US companies. We're looking at Lockheed Martin. I have some pictures here I need to share with you guys. We're looking at the likes of Lockheed Martin, the likes of Raytheon, the likes of General Dynamics. This is General Dynamics known for building some submarine stuff. All this, it's going to be imposed. The Chinese going to be imposing those sanctions, and rightly so. Because now, here's the thing, guys. Now we got a taste of our medicine. Because the amount of jobs in the defense contractor. I used to work for one during my days in DC beside the government. So, and I don't shy away from it because you need to know the truth, guys. And then you know me, I'm not going to be cherry picking stuff, the amount of volume of business that those companies do with the government. The big example I can give you is Elon Musk. How did Elon Musk become a billionaire? All the contracts through the government, defense, the Department of Defense, that is. You don't become a billionaire out of just making YouTube. You know what I mean? So it's common sense. And this is why I need you to understand the importance of why these sanctions matter. So, but before I'll do this, I decided to do this even though I did it before regarding geography and history. Why is history important? Because last time when I did this, I only touched the surface. Of course, you can cover a 5,000-year history in this setting here anyway. Even when I'm in the process of writing a book about China, even the chapter that I'm going to devote to the history won't be enough. So, but what I decided to do anytime I have an opportunity like this, I will mention part of a history of China from back then. So today I decided to do this briefly again, then we'll jump into the analysis that I am going to do about the sanctions. So let's start with the geography, and let me share the screen with you and give credit to World Atlas, because that's where I get the maps here. So of course, most of the maps, if you look at them, where the borders are and so forth. Now, for this one, you can see that is still for Macau, Taipei, and Hong Kong. They are all falls under the Chinese territory, just separately. That's all it is for that. But interesting enough is that in this particular one, I did see it with my own eyes. In some other political maps, they mention the borders with the countries, they include Taiwan as a sovereign nation, which is wrong in my opinion, because you can't indicate about a country that is not a sovereign country. Taiwan remains a part of China. That just, you can't call it a country, because it's not independent. Simple as that. So in this one here, when I looked at the boundaries of the countries, which I'm going to share with you. So when you think about China, which is an East Asian country, that's what it is, situated in the northern and eastern hemispheres of the earth, similar way to South Korea, that is. China shares its borders with 14 countries. So listen carefully, guys. Mongolia in the north, Russia and North Korea in the northeast, Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar or Burma, India, Bhutan, and Nepal in the south, Pakistan in the southwest, Afghanistan, Tajikistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan in the west. China is also bounded by the Yellow Sea and the East China Sea in the east and the South Sea in the southeast. So no mention of Taiwan as an independent. As I mentioned, and you need to know when I do my research. That's what I'm saying, guys. It takes me time. It takes time and energy and resources to conduct all this research. So I did see political maps in which they indicate the borders that they include Taiwan as a country. Well, it's not. In this one here, you see it on the map. Let me once again show you this one here, guys. And share screen. Right there, right there at the right hand corner, you say Taipei there, and you say Hong Kong, and you say Macau. So, and I went there to all three locations during my last trip, and as Chinese as they can get in the issue of Taiwan. They are working, I believe, Beijing and Taipei working on certain. I don't know. It's very complicated. Make no mistake about it, because who fuels the tensions? That's the reason why. When I was in Taipei, sad to say that the young generation, in at least the one I encountered, I shall not generalize, they don't seem to have an understanding of really what's going on because of what's been presented to them through their own entities media-wise. So that's the... And I'll welcome anybody from Taipei, an official, if he wants to come on my channel, and he and I or she and I will have a conversation and put the dots on the letters, respectfully, of course, as to put in things, and I'll ask the questions that matters, because I know something about. So if anybody here in Taipei, you are most welcome here. So, all right, let's move on into the history, and this is where it's very, very important to understand this part, and a very, very important aspects of it. So I'm going to be sharing some facts with you, and this way you get to have an understanding of what is going on. So now let's go all the way back to prehistoric China. Yeah, this is what's important for you to understand. The origin of Chinese civilization. Do you guys know that is dated back to the Paleolithic age, when Homo erectus lived in the area more than 1 million years ago? As a matter of fact, they did find some archaeological sites. Yeah, some archaeological sites in China, especially in Shanxi. My apologies if I miss. As a matter of fact, the picture, let me share it with you. This Shenhe, this one is the revolution that took place at that time. But the archaeological in Shanxi province is dated back to some 1.27 million years. So, and then came the Neolithic age, which came around 10,000 BC, and sort of carries an evidence of the proto-Chinese mallet agriculture and even settlements along the famous Yangtze River. And is said, according to the historical record, to be about 8,000 years old. And the latter half of the Neolithic age, it was the establishment of the Yellow River civilization, which was led to the establishment to the Yangzhou culture. To those who are familiar, let me put it in, I'm going to put it in the chat box for you guys to see the name. For those who speak Chinese, so you know which one I am pronouncing. Yeah, it's right there on the screen, guys. And that one is the Yangzhou culture, which is known to have yielded the most significant sites from the era. Then you move into the early civilizations. What are we talking about here? We're talking about the early Chinese civilizations that included the Xia dynasty, which remained from around 2100 BC until 1600 BC, and is described in the ancient record of the grand historians, from which, here is the key, pottery and shells have been excavated that belong to this period. So after this, it was followed by the Shang dynasty, which existed from 16 to 1046 BC, 1600 to 1046 BC. The oracle bones were found during this time, which had divination, a record inscribed on it. Why is this important? Because that marked the beginning of the Zhou, or the Zhou. It's Zhou, Zhou dynasty, which was witnessed in 1046 to 256 BC, which actually emerged in the Yellow River Valley. That is why it's important to understand. And this one here sort of then began their rule under the semi-feudal system. The spring and autumn, or the Warring States period, saw the annexation by the local military leaders, and the modern system of the Shang and Qian emerged in the country. Fast forward to the third period, which is the Qin dynasty. Qin dynasty, of course, was established between 221 and 206 BC. During this period, the kings subdued the parts of the Han Chinese homeland and united them under the central legalized government. The other dynasty was the Han dynasty, and its period consisted of 202 BC to 220 AD. This one was regarded as the golden age in the Chinese history, which actually consolidated the foundation of China. This is what's important to understand, guys, about this part of history. Let me go back to my... And without understanding this, it just won't make sense. Qin dynasty period began in 9 AD. So, and it was said to be the short-lived dynasty in the history. So, but many economic reforms were undertaken during this period. Even though it was short-lived, a lot of changes have been made. So the other main dynasties which followed after this was the Jin dynasty, J-I-N, Jin dynasty. Then you have the northern and southern dynasties like Sui, S-U-I dynasty. Then the Tang dynasty, T-A-N-G, Tang dynasty. Then you have 5 other dynasties and the 10 kingdoms, Yuan dynasty, and finally it reaches the Qin dynasty. So that's why it's important to understand. Of course, I can't skip through without talking about the Chinese Revolution of the 1911. This is again where that picture comes in. As a matter of fact, that's what it was. When I looked at the record, this is what I saw. This one here, guys, is the Chen-He. Let me put it here, right here, so you know the name again. I'm gonna put it in the chat box for you guys to see. And my apologies for the mispronunciation. You know, I wish I can speak the language, but I don't. So once again, the Chen-He Revolution is also known as the Chinese Revolution of the 1911, which threw the last imperial dynasty of China, and that was the Qin dynasty. It led to the formation of Republic of China. The revolution witnessed many revolts and the uprising, and the main turning point of this movement was the Wushang uprising, which was actually a result of mishandling of the railway protection movement. It is seen that the Republic of China, which was in Formosa, okay, and the People's Republic of China each considered themselves as the true successor of the Chen-He Revolution. Yeah, this is why it's important. I have a picture of I looked at the record and I pulled up a picture, and I'm going to put the link where those pictures come in, so because you got to give credit to where the pictures came in from the article. This is the city wall of the Qian, one of the oldest cities, right here. Take a look, guys. So then come the modern day, the PRC. And of course, when I say PRC in modern day, I am also referring to Taiwan as well. So the People's Republic of China, PRC, made the Japanese troop surrender in the mainland and Taiwan following which war? Which war, guys? Does anybody can tell me in the chat box which war was it? Which main war was the PRC made the Japanese troops surrender in the mainland and Taiwan? Okay, Civil War, no. YT, you got it. It was World War, right here, YT, you got it. World War II, that's what it was, guys. It was World War II. And after that, the main aim was what? To look after the economic development of the island. That's what the PRC did at that time. So there were many international projects at that time started in the mainland and Taiwan. So, and that's where the whole, and I'm not going to get into, you all know what happened after World War II and how we got involved into the who supported the Chiang Kai-shek and so forth. I was in Taipei and I saw all the historical monuments there just to see what it is and so forth. So you all know how it ended. So, but anyway, I wanted to share this part of history because, and it's not enough. I just shared the tip of the iceberg. But it's very important for you to understand this dynamics, to see how China now is moving forward in contemporary time. So a reflection of how it has developed over time back then. So this is what's important to understand. So So now let's go back to our conversation about sanctions. So here is what's interesting. I'm going to share something with you, and I am going to share something at the end for you to understand why China is wording certain things certain ways. It's not a coincidence. It doesn't happen in a vacuum. Chinese are strategically moving forward, even in their communication regarding the imposition of sanctions. Here is what the Ministry of Commerce in China said, and I quote, "These measures, meaning the sanctions, are aimed at safeguarding China's national security and interests and international non-proliferation obligations. In addition, 28 new U.S. companies have been added to China's export control list." End of quote. Why is this important? It's because it was almost the same language that the U.S. used when it imposed the sanctions on the chips, microchips, that is. Because what was the argument Washington was making? National security. Heck, this is not a laughable matter. Even I joked one time about, are we going to now make garlic coming from China a national security concern? Should we sanction China about garlic? Of course, I was being facetious here. So that just shows you how ridiculous things got in Washington. Now China is just doing the same in reverse. So, and here is the thing. What you need to understand, why China's been motivated to impose the second round of sanctions. This one has to do with U.S. arms sales to Taiwan. Because remember, Biden is leaving office soon. But what did Biden did? Just about a month and a half ago, approved a $528 or $530 million of weapons. This is just a fraction of what we usually sell to Taiwan. So China is saying U.S. arms sales to Taiwan are a major source of these tensions that exist between Beijing and Washington. Why? It's because to China, the consideration that Taiwan is part of its territory, it doesn't make any sense why a foreign government will go ahead and arm an island that belongs to China, armed to the teeth. So, of course, China announced, and I'm going to share this with you, that China has announced that it does not rule out the use of force. I don't see China doing that because it doesn't, to me, China, it's pragmatic. Why use force against that? What for? What are you going to destroy your own people? No matter what you look at it, how you look at it. Taiwan and Macau, and they still are part of China. They are Chinese of inheritance. Yeah, some might argue, well, this is from this ethnic group and this is from that ethnic group. Beside the point. What I saw in Macau versus what I saw in Taiwan, I can see the distinction there. But both of them converge on one specific aspect, is that both of them are part of China. And this is why, if China mentioned, even though the Western media pushing the narrative about the term, and this term, use of force. Why? Because they wanted to drill into the Western mindset about is the military approach that China intends to use to solve the issue. When in reality, at least based on the conversation that I had with some people in China, there is no intentions for that. I've been arguing this in my writings and whatever, that I do not see China using force because it will not bode well for China. It's not that China mainland is scared or this or that. No, it just doesn't make sense to target your own people. That's like us going to Hawaii and target the Hawaiians. Even though Hawaii used to be a kingdom independent, if we are to speak the truth. So now China understands that Washington is the Taiwan's biggest supporter as far as both politically and militarily. And this is why to Chinese thinking, we better just put sanctions on those companies. So, and like I mentioned, I'm sorry, I got the exact number of what Biden approved for the sales. It was $571.3 million. And this, just in military aid, this is nothing. So, and of course that upsets the Chinese. It's no different than what the idiot, what's her name? She left. I don't know if she's still alive, or Pelosi, when she made the trip to Taiwan. Why provoke the Chinese? What for? It just doesn't make any sense. Like I always say, why don't you cooperate? Cooperation is where, this is why Indonesia, finally, it's moving in a direction despite the threat of the US. We were threatening Indonesia behind closed doors. But Indonesia seeing where the future is, where the development is. It's not in conflicts, it's not in war, it's in cooperation, in building infrastructure, in investments, in uplifting the status of your citizens. Something our government here, and it's a very, I'm ashamed to even say government, because it's not competent. It's incompetent. Can't even think about the welfare of the American people. So, and here is what's interesting. After China announced this, Washington did not respond. Washington did not issue any immediate comments or response whatsoever. And this is where you have to understand where things are headed and why China decided to do it right now. The timing of it is very, very important. So, and the thing is, to Chinese, excuse me, Chinese wants to get ahead of the curve prior to Trump inaugurating the office on January 20th. We all know what Trump's going to do as far as the tariffs, right, on the Chinese. Chinese, of course, going to reciprocate, or respond. But at the same time, China's taking the step now to put the dots on the letter by saying, this is a message to the Americans that, by the way, any future negotiations we're going to enter into, we will be negotiating from a position of strength. That is what it means. That's the subtle message it's sending. Because by sanctioning the defense contractors, because if you think about our economy, what do we produce? Literally, for my American audience, you live here, you know, we produce weapons. That's about it. What else do we produce? Everything is imported from overseas. And this is, by the way, guys, when we relaunch the other channel, we've been doing some major conversation regarding the changes of the direction of that channel. So be on the lookout for that. And we're going to be resuming our activity on that channel very, very soon. We're going to move into this direction of the business, of the economy, of your wealth, of your well-being, because that's what matters. And most Americans are not being told the truth about where things are. So that's just FYI. So, and this is why China is moving into this direction and wanted to do it right now. And this leads me to talk about two angles, or address this topic from two angles. One is geopolitical and one is economic. So I'll start with the geopolitical one. And like I always say to you guys, I do read from different sources in foreign languages, in their original language, because that's how usually you get the content as it is. Then you'll read the translations and so forth. So I had a chance to read in Arabic language an article by an author by the name Abdul Wahab al-Mursi. I don't know where he's from, but anyway, he wrote in Arabic about really where China and US are headed comes 2025. And I already did a video for you about that. What I found very interesting is that the author addressed the historical aspect, which to me make more sense now, why China now, right now, is in a position to say, we will sanction you. We feel comfortable enough to sanction you, meaning America. Because let's face it. Let's face it, guys. Tell me if there is any other country around the world that has sanctions the US. No. Now, I might miss something, but usually I keep my eyes open. There's none except China. That tells me, from a geopolitical standpoint of view, that China is standing on a solid ground regarding the confidence in its ability to realize the changes in the global geopolitical landscape, that it's not going to play to the favor of the US or to the favor of China either. It's going to play to the favor of a multipolar order, which China is advocating for. You guys see the difference? If you are looking at a system in which the US dictates the term versus a system where everybody takes part of the decision. This is why, in my opinion, why China moved forward with the second round of sanction at this time. So, and of course, the US has always maintained, because if you are to go back to the early 20th century, so the US has adopted some sort of a strategy, if you will, regarding China, engagement with China, or integration, that is. So at the same time, while the US was doing this, it was also maintaining its dominant role when it comes down to the military in the Asia Pacific region. Why? It's because it was always keeping an eye on the rise of China. Doesn't want to see China sort of move up the ladder. Well, it won't matter now, whether we like it or not. The world has changed, and the US, we need to change with it. Otherwise, the world is moving forward. Look what's going on in Canada. Look what's going on in Australia. Look what's going on in Philippines, South Korea, Japan, Europe, Germany, France, Italy, Spain. You get the idea. So the idea back then, during the early 20th century, when the US was thinking in terms of, well, we can engage the Chinese, sort of involve them per se into the structure of the global system. However, the US has always kept a step in the back, ensuring the full dominance. Why? Because we never thought that one day China is going to rise to the top. And that's exactly what China ended up doing in the last 3.5 decades, which is fascinating in its own right, because it took China about 35 to 38 years to be what it is today. So, however, all this, that engagement from a geopolitical perspective, has changed. And when did it start? I'm going to share a picture here with you. It started with this guy, 2011. So what happened in 2011? This is when, and I was still in Washington at that time, and of course I started seeing this in 2007. And my argument was, you're shifting to the east, where it's kind of too late. Why? It's because the wealth has already started to shift at that time. So if you are to shift, it will become very clear that what your intentions are. What are you intend to achieve? Are you going to be able to stop China? You won't be able to. Why? Because China start to build things internally. So, and in my last trip, what I saw, just from an infrastructure aspect, gave me pause into the idea of, I wonder why they were very quiet and busy in the last 3 decades. They were rebuilding their country. The money they generates, it wasn't went to some foreign land, or it went inside the country, which is what you will expect a government to do, a government that is competent. And I don't care what government that is, as long as the government does the right thing. And that's exactly what the Chinese end up doing. So in 2011, the US some sort of start to realize its approach to sort of integrate China into the into a global system, but still under the dominance of the US, is not working, because China didn't want it. So there was some partial success, but hey, like everything, you wanted the cheap labor, you, the US in this case, you wanted cheap labor. China provided that cheap labor, but at the same time, China also learned to build its own. And of course, as I said, it's not in 2011 when it started. That was given with the rise of the President Xi Jinping at the time. I got a picture here. That's where it made sense for the Chinese to go ahead and impose the sanctions at this time. So and because why is it important? It's because if you go back, and there is a record for it's public information, if you look at the President Xi's speech at that time was different from his predecessor, Chen Zemin, Hu Juntao, who else was? Those are the only ones I remember. So it makes more sense. And this is where the US went full throttle with the pivot to Asia, but it was too late. But the US still counted on certain countries in the region, the likes of South Korea, Japan, Philippines, and Australia. That's what they're gonna sort of carry the load for the US shift into Asia. And all of this aimed at one thing and one thing only: to contain China. I've argued, literally, guys, for almost a decade. I've argued containing China, the containment of China is useless. It's too late for that. And you won't be able to contain China anyway because of its sheer size of the market on the global stage. So you want to contain China? You want to contain the rise of China? You won't be able to. And that's exactly what ended up happening. And even if you look at our so-called foreign policy, okay, mainly towards China, we're not talking about the whole Asia. We're talking about China here. So there is no difference between any administrations that comes in, because the incompetent and the ill-conceived American foreign policy, a position towards China, never changed. So with the change of the US presidents, it won't matter, because that gives you an idea. It's not the president of the United States that dictate or decide on a foreign policy. It's the entities behind the scenes, the hidden hand, as I call them. So it doesn't matter where the president comes from, which party, when it comes down to at least if so-called foreign policy, American foreign policy towards China stays constant. And this is why when you think about and this is what I'm going to link to you, what I said at the beginning, the statements from the Ministry of Commerce of China. So listen carefully to what the former President Obama said about containment of China. Here is what happened, because it was evident when Obama was in office, in one of his statements, warning Intel, Intel company that makes the microchip stuff, one of America's leading giant companies, against concluding any agreement with China in the field of technology without prior knowledge and approval from the US government. End of quote. The same argument China is making today about when it's posing sanctions on the defense contractors is the same thing, because we want to protect our country. From an economic perspective, I also had a chance to read the economic dimensions regarding the US-China relations. And I came across from an article from overseas in a foreign language by an author by the name Isa Ali Omar. I don't know where the gentleman is from, but it was very interesting. I read it in its original language, and I concur with some of the tenets of the article. Very, very spot on. Here is what's important for you to understand from an economic perspective: why China decided to move forward right now before the inauguration of Donald Trump, which, by the way, he's going to appear in court in 2 days. Makes you just wonder. So, what happened? back in 2022, and this is according to the article Isa Ali Omar addressed also. And I, of course, looked at the information, confirmed it. And so what happened with at that time? In 2022, what's his name? Biden signed a latest version. Listen carefully. Latest version of the U.S. national security strategy. And pardon me, in that report, Biden described China, I quote here, Biden described China as a more significant geopolitical challenge for the United States and said that his administration is aware of China, is aware that China has intentions to reshape the international order in its favor, and that it will do everything it can to prevent Beijing from achieving its desired goal. End of quote. Well, first of all, let's break this down. The international order that China is hoping for, it's not about China. It's a multipolar order. That's one. Second, China is not intended to reshape how the system is. For example, look at just the BRICS. Is China imposing its currency on BRICS members to use? Correct me, guys, if I'm wrong. The answer is no. Compare that to the US dollar. And you wonder why many countries are leaving the US dollar. Look what's going on right now in Europe. And again, I had a family visit from Europe, spent Christmas with me here. They're telling me exactly what's going on in Europe. So why? It's because when the decision was made about the creation of the euro, which we the one who pushed in, so it can be tied to the US dollar. China has no intentions of using the yuan as the global currency for that. He's telling countries, you want to trade in the bilateral currencies? By no means. Look no further than the trade between Russia and China in their own currencies. So even India has sort of objected to any currency in BRICS, whatever. Well, I can understand. India was concerned about its own currency, but its currency is useless on the global market. It's a fact. I'm not putting down India here. It's the fact. So who wants to trade in rupees? Come on. So the same argument was made back in 22 when none other than, what's her name? Gina Raimondo. You all remember her? The Secretary of Commerce. And she said, and I paraphrase here, that we will do anything to stop China from producing chips domestically. Because here is what it says. A quote, although Uncle Sam's country is not a direct producer of semiconductor, it will impose restrictions on manufacturer in order not to sell them to China. End of quote. Well, I am reminded of one particular guy right here, none other than another Dutch idiot. And I call him idiot because he was never qualified to be a foreign minister. And second thing, I got a word from inside the country that his dealings was with the elites inside the Netherlands. He didn't care for the average Dutch citizen. And if you think about how he became a secretary of NATO due to this meeting right here in the White House with none other than the idiot Biden. Why? It's because during this meeting, Biden instructed Mark Rutte to stop selling the equipments for the nano chips, the 3 millimeter nano or something, very, very specific. And only the ASML company in the Netherlands that produces that. And what did he do? The idiot went ahead and signed into law, no equipment will be sold to China. And in return, he was rewarded with the NATO position. Because who decides on the Secretary General of NATO? Is the United States. Just to let you guys know. This is why always NATO commander is a 4-star US general. and the general secretary is always picked by the US. So he was after that position. We told him, if you do this, you'll get the position, because there were two other individuals after that position. One is the idiot Boris Johnson. You all remember him, the clown guy. And the other person is the liar van der Leyen. You all remember her. Both of them were, and I have confirmed sources indicated they were after that position. But because Mark decided to stop selling the equipments to China, that was the reward. And this is why China went ahead and started producing its own. As a matter of fact, the last time I was in China, and I went to a Huawei store for the phones and all that stuff. And I asked one of the managers there about the chips. And he said, yeah, some of the chips on this are produced here in China. I said, through whom? He said, in Vida. And I said, does this mean that China now is in possession to produce the 3 nano? He said, not yet, but they're working towards it. I don't know if they are yet. If anybody knows, can you please share with the community if you know anything about whether China has achieved now the 3 nano technology or not. The last thing I checked was about 5 nanometer, something like that. And add to all this, because here is the thing. If you think about, that's why I said, the one thing that is consistent about American so-called foreign policy toward China, it's constant. It doesn't change from one president to the next. Even when Trump was in office last time, what was the first decision he did? So Trump took a decision against Huawei after issuing the presidential decree number 13873. And you know what it was entitled? Check this out. In quote, protecting information and communication technology and service supply chain, end of quote. And he goes on to say, this will prevent American companies from using communication equipments from sources that the administration considers a threat to the American national security. And right after this order, right after it, the U.S. Department of Commerce added Huawei to the list of companies that the U.S. government considers to be undermining U.S. interests. Well, hold on a second. By adding Huawei to the so-called entity list, the Trump administration at that time ensured that Huawei will be covered by the new executive order, when in reality it has nothing to do with the national security. It has to do with not wanting the Chinese to develop their own technology into all this. And this is why you all remember Meng Wanzhou was detained in Canada, because we gave the order to the idiot Trudeau to arrest her unjustly. So, and all this is about the microchips. So, anyway, this is what I wanted to share with you guys. I hope you find it very informative. Let me share one more thing, I guess, before I head out. If there are, I only answer if you have questions, super sticker questions, because you all know that's what I do now. If you do, because remember, guys, what I share with you here, and I do with you here, guys, it's not some average information. You can get it from anywhere. Yeah, you can. You go read whatever. And it takes a lot of efforts to put this together. So your support for the channel is very, very crucial and critical. So you all know me. I'm straightforward. I don't sugarcoat things, whatever. Without your support, this channel, I don't know what will happen. Let's put it at that. So I will greatly appreciate your support for this channel here. So also remember to, what was I going to say? I forgot now. It'll come to me. So let me say thank you to all those who have been supporting channel. Rafael Legond, as always, greatly appreciate you, man. It means a lot to me what you've been doing for this channel, and I am very, very grateful. So I know some people think, well, it's information. No. It doesn't work that way. You all know how it is. I had to give up certain things to do this for you guys. It's for all of us, the community. So thank you very much, Rafael. You wrote, Prof, I went back and checked a doctrine left by Mao weeks before his death. He said, you cannot reason with neocons. Only take arm will save you. Very interesting. And I believe China now is in position to take on the US militarily. And it will be a devastating one. And if we think, like I shared this with you guys before, the Pentagon ran 18 scenarios as far as the outcome of a war with China. 17 out of the 18 came up that we lost the war to China. We only won in one scenario. So that tells you the story right there. So thank you so much, Rafael. And again, much appreciate you. I believe Blinken does not understand China by saying she told Putin not to nuke Kiev. This is the opposite. China will not play with us like Russia. That's for sure. And how can they? How can they play with us when we are trying to sort of contain them just because we don't like the fact that they have progressed economically speaking? And again, I was there. That is the reason why I decided to do the second trip to Asia. Me on the ground, seeing with my own eyes. I don't depend on someone else to tell me, oh, Dr. O, the infrastructure of China is incredible. Well, yes, that's great. But if I see it with my own eyes, then I got my own confirmation. And what I saw was mind-blowing so far when it comes down to infrastructure. Did I go to all regions? No, I did not. That is one of the reasons why I want to go back the second time to different locations. I'm not going to the same locations I was in before because China is so big and I need to see other locations, other regions, and see where the development is regarding that part. So you're absolutely correct. Francis Tango, another avid supporter of the channel. Thank you so much, Francis. Question, what does the sanction mean? Countries will no longer receive weapons such as Israel and Ukraine and perhaps Taiwan. Happy birthday, Dr. O. Thank you. Well, the sanctions will mean basically that China will put, let me put this one. That means China will put limits on the dual use of certain technologies for certain companies, that the parts will be used for the production of weapons that will be sold to Taiwan. The whole objective of China is to prevent more weapons from being sold to Taiwan. And if the US will want to get the products from somewhere else, it's not easy to set up shop and which country wants to enter into business with the US now? Not so many. Now, look at Europeans exactly. You are in Europe, Francis. You know how it is. You know how things are getting in Europe, how bad that is. So nobody wants to enter into business with the US anymore because we'll turn around and sanction them. So that is the reason why US is doing this. Stephen Hayes, thank you so much for your support. Greatly appreciate you for that. Israel paid US politicians will kill us all by conflict with war, China and Russia and Iran. They are ideologically indoctrinated lunatics like Nolan, Kagan, Blinken, Sullivan, Biden. You got a point there, Sam. You got a point there, man. I couldn't agree more. And it's the truth. So it's not you're saying something that is classified, or it's the truth. And truth matters. So and you're absolutely correct. This is where you're seeing these tensions fermenting. I look at in that part of the world in Asia now with the Philippines and what's going on with South Korea, with ensuring we want to ensure that the next guy in charge will toe the line with American policies. Australia is gone. Philippines is gone unless you have the new president in Philippines, which I believe, and I am still waiting to interview the vice president of Philippines, Sara Duterte, when she has time to come on the channel. So I know she's busy. She's dealing with impeachment procedure. It's a mess over there. They are trying to prevent her from running for president, and I believe she will make a good president. So, and I hope to interview her here on this channel by asking her key questions regarding Philippines. So, but you're absolutely correct. A war with China ain't gonna be pretty for anybody, and I hope we don't have cool heads in Washington anymore, because our system is corrupted beyond belief. Beyond belief. You all know, if it were up to me, you know what I will do. But I'm not in Washington. I'm not interested in being in Washington. I am not in, I'm done. Anytime you are around the setting where there's so much corruption, it's up to you to decide, do you want to remove yourself or you want to be part of it? So I choose, since 2013, whatever, made that decision, because it gets worse for me when I start to see. I made decision and I just removed myself. So once again, guys, thank you so much. Please hit that like button, please, 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 and remember to subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you next time. As always, remember, geopolitics impact your daily life in more ways than one. Till next time, guys. Bye-bye.